route. Oops, Drew, you ready? Okay, great. I want to welcome everybody to the Resilient SR 37 Policy Committee meeting. We've been doing this work for, oh gosh, I'm gonna look at Daryl, 5 years, 6 years, 7, a long time. State Route 37 is very important to all of us here, and no more important to folks living on this end of the route. And I'm sure you saw them if you're coming from Marin County, waiting to get across SR 37 for work. So I appreciate you coming this direction. I'm going to actually ask to do introductions. We have some new people on the committee, and I think it'd be important for us to hear, obviously, your name, where you represent, and then maybe one thing about SR 37 you'd like to see us tackle. So I'm going to start with Mayor McConnell.
Yes, good morning. My name is Robert McConnell. I am the mayor of the city of Vallejo, and the most pressing concern for my residents is how that means test is going to apply.
In terms of toll, yes. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Stephanie Molden-Peters, happy to rejoin this group again, now county supervisor in Southern Marin, and very interested in seeing the interim project go forward.
Yeah, Brian Colbert, council member, Town of San Anselmo, chair of the Transportation Authority of Marin. I'm concerned about the people that have to wait in the traffic to come into Marin, among the many issues.
Eric Lucan, county supervisor in Marin, representing District 5, which is the North Marin Novato area. I guess my topic for today would be we'll go with the 121 interchange.
Excellent. Push the button.
Yes, thank you. Great question, one that I wasn't super prepared for, but I'll just share a quick anecdote after I introduce myself. My name is Victoria Fleming. I'm an MTC commissioner and a council member for the city of Santa Rosa. But my day job is I'm a clinical social worker for the Sonoma County Crisis Stabilization Unit. And in that role, you can't leave until you have a new somebody with a license come on to relieve you. So oftentimes we'll be in a situation where a nurse or a social worker can't go home, pick up their children, make their dinner because somebody's stuck on State Route 37. And it's a significant detriment to our families and our workforce. So getting this fixed in a way that's fair and equitable, to the mayor's point, around the means testing is a high priority of mine.
Ryan Gregory, Napa County Supervisor, second term, but new to NVTA and brand new to this committee. Former civil engineer, so very interested in projects and getting things done. And that's what I'll say about this one is I'm here to learn and figure out how I can participate and help get it done. Thank you.
Great. I want to thank everybody for your introductions. Erin Hannigan, I am chair of this committee, finally. Supervisor for Solano County. I represent District 1, which is most of the city of Vallejo. I've been serving my community now for 16 years. And I can tell you my biggest concern are for the families of the workers who are traveling on SR 37 that are going westbound in the morning and eastbound in the evenings. I know that all that time sitting in traffic is time that is not spent with young family members, taking care of people's health and, supporting their community in a meaningful way. And so that's why I'm here. One of the main reasons why I'm here. So with that, I'm going to look to, yes. Oh, yes, Supervisor Gorin, hi.
Am I unmuted? Good morning, everybody. Because of schedule constraints and the amount of traffic on Highway 37, I'm participating virtually this morning. Thanks all for the opportunity. I've been serving in the policy committee since its inception. Like Erin, I've been representing the folks for a long time. My concerns are trying to get a capacity expanded quickly, but also recognizing, since I serve on the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority, I'm concerned about the impact of an interim project on wetlands. We're going to need those wetlands sooner rather than later. But if in fact, and it looks like we'll have to have tolling, I'm concerned about the cut through traffic through Napa and Sonoma Valley to bypass the tolling. So those are my concerns and I'm listening. Thanks.
Happy to have you, Supervisor. Thank you for dialing in. All right, I'm going to look to Drew. We have a quorum, Drew?
Yes, Chair Hannigan, we do have a quorum in the room.
Okay, great. And this will be an opportunity for public comment. This is a time where public comment on specific agenda items will have to occur during that time, but this is for opportunities to speak about items that are not on our agenda today. So if anybody has an interest in to speak, now is your opportunity. You have a limit of 3 minutes. Go ahead.
There's a little switch on the microphone. Good morning, members. Steve Bertelbaugh. I'm with the Transportation Land Use Coalition of Sonoma County. And I just wanted to bring us up to the issue of overpromising for the public. If we eliminate a bottleneck in one place, there's a tendency for it to move to another place. And there's already a bottleneck at the entrance of Highway 37 to Highway 101 in Novato. If you add a lot of traffic that's coming down toward that bottleneck, it's going to grow. It'll probably grow as far as Novato Creek. It may grow as far as Atherton Avenue. So people who are trying to get from where they are now here in Vallejo to San Rafael are not going to see much improvement in their morning commute. The afternoon commute will be improved considerably because that drop-off point is at Highway 121. So the eastbound traffic is going to improve a lot. Westbound traffic is not going to improve very much. So we shouldn't be promising people that improvement is going to occur. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for the opportunity. Tom Conlon. I'm here today just as an individual, but I serve in the Climate and Energy Committee for the statewide Sierra Club, and I'm on the City of Sonoma's Climate Action Commission, a newly formed commission in the City of Sonoma. And I appreciate the concerns that all of you have addressed this morning. I share many of those concerns. I've actually traveled on that highway. I know how long you have to wait sometimes to get across that highway. But I'm here to just emphasize the climate emergency and the fact that approaching this project as a conventional traffic congestion solution is not going to solve our climate crisis. And I'm aware of the concept of induced demand. When you build a highway, they will come and they will fill it right back up again. And I'm not certain how much planning has really seriously gone into anticipating the life cycle of this expansion. So I hope you'll pay close attention to that. And I'm not speaking just for myself when I say that. I know the youth commissioner on our commission last night, 75 students from the high school expressed grave concerns about their future, all expressing climate anxiety. We need to bring those voices into this room. They're not here today. So I've just said a few words. I know you're thinking about these things, but I hope you'll keep them front of mind. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Collin. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else? Okay. With that, we'll go ahead with the agenda. Yes.
I received a pre-submitted public comment from Jody Campbell. I have provided it to the 37 Policy Committee as well as posted on the CTA website under this event.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. And this is a request from the committee to review the March committee meeting minutes and offer them up for approval. Everybody had a chance to take a look at it? Mayor McConnell?
I was going to move approval.
Thank you so much.
Second.
Appreciate that. Is there any dissension among the committee members? Seeing none, the motion passes.
I was just going to say I'll abstain officially.
Okay, you have that, Drew?
Yeah, I do need to do a roll call.
Okay, go for
I'm doing
it,
the
because
record.
we have
Because we have the
Supervisor Gorin on.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Councilmember Colbert,
I'll abstain.
Councilmember Fleming,
Yes.
Supervisor Gorin,
Yes.
Supervisor Gregory,
Abstain.
Mayor McConnell,
Aye.
Supervisor Moulton Peters.
Yes.
Vice Chair Luken.
Yes.
And Chair Hannigan.
Yes.
And we see that passing.
Thank you so much, Drew. All right, and we'll go on to the discussion and information items on item number 4. Kevin with MTC.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Chen. I'm with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission with the Design and Project Delivery section. So I'm here to provide an update on the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. Maybe a minute for Drew to bring up the slides.
And those will happen the slides will happen behind us. So
Yes,
we're gonna
right.
move on.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to look at the slides, we might have to turn a little bit. Yeah, so I guess it's good to hear a lot of the comments from you all that congestion is one of the issues that many of us are concerned about. It's not really equitable for those that are living on the Vallejo side and having to get stuck in traffic for so long on a daily basis. So this project is really looking at addressing that congestion issue in the near term. The Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project, looking at addressing the 10-mile bottleneck in this middle stretch of the corridor. This project will provide HOV lanes. It would implement bus transit service. It would encourage carpooling. It would provide public access improvements, as well as providing some ecological improvements as well. Now, this is not a full update, but I just want to give a just overall picture of what this project provides, since we have some new members here today. Today's update is fairly brief, but I'll go to the next slide, please. I guess the major announcement here to share with the group here is that 2 weeks ago, we received the approval from the California Transportation Commission, the CTC, in approving the Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority, BAFA, to serve as the toll authority for this corridor. So getting the toll authority approval is a key milestone. It really allows us to be able to move forward with the project. Now, tolling is really important for this corridor in a couple of aspects. One, I think as one of the gentlemen kind of alluded to earlier, climate goals for the state is really important. So what tolling can help us accomplish on this corridor is to help us manage traffic demand. With tolling, basically a pricing strategy would really encourage people to think about not driving, instead would take carpool or take transit service. So every drive-alone vehicle we can take off the road that can change into carpool or transit would basically reduce vehicle miles of travel, VMT. So that's the measure that the climate goal is being measured by. So having the ability to toll would really help us accomplish that goal of reducing VMT in the region. So that's a very big one. And second, is also very important with tolling. It would help provide more certainty to the ability for us to fund and construct this project. I have the funding plan on a later slide, but with the approval of the toll authority, then we can start the work on financing against future toll funds that can help us get this project constructed. Now, getting the toll authority approval is basically the first step of many works to follow. One of the things I think many of us are concerned about is equity. So this is a topic that came up many times during the public meeting on the proposed tolling, as well as with the CTC commissioners. And a specific follow-up for us on the toll equity discount program is for us to consider the regional income level, as opposed to using federal income level as a criteria for the toll discount program. So that's something that we'll look into as an agency. MTC does have a number of equity discount program that are kind of like that was started recently. For example, the Express Lane Start program, as well as the Clipper Start program, really looking at providing discounts to those that qualify. Now, I guess so far, a lot of the income thresholds being set, it's really based on the federal level. But with this request for us to look into some sort of regional threshold in setting that income level consideration, I think we, MTC, working with all our partners, are going to be looking at that a lot more closely on how we can move forward with that. Again, like I said, this is just the beginning of it, and we look forward to continue to engage the policy folks here as well as the rest of the other regional programs in addressing equity. The third bullet here is bus transit service. This is something that we are going to be working with our partners. Actually, Daryl from STA has been kind of spearheading that effort for a while, as well as our partners from NVTA in Napa. So the plan here is that when we have the HOV lane constructed and open as part of the project, we will also be implementing bus transit service at the same time. So, we are approximately 4 years away from it. So that gives us a little bit of time to figure out and really plan out the details of those bus routes, service frequencies, transit fares, whether we implement like actual full-size bus or more like micro transit, because we are implementing new transit service. It takes time to build up ridership on the corridor. So we might want to start with something that's more nimble, knowing that the origin and destination are sort of spread out on both sides of the corridor. So that's something that we'll continue to have a discussion with our transportation authority partners and transit operators on both sides of the corridor. Last but not least is the location of the toll gantry that came up in the toll discussion at the public meeting as well as at the CTC meeting. Right now the toll gantry is proposed between the Sears Point and Mare Island in this middle stretch. And the question came up in terms of, what about the rest of the corridor, such as like on the west side towards Marin or west of 121. So that's something that we'll, be doing more of an assessment on moving forward. That might be more relevant in the context of maybe like the broader corridor consideration in terms of like maybe the long-term stabilized adaptation. How should the broader tolling strategy be considered for this corridor beyond just the near-term project? So again, this is something that we'll continue to work with you all. Next, please. So here's a summary of the project funding plan. The total project cost right now is $430 million. We have about $80 million that's committed between state funds, regional funds, and other local funds. Now, what's in green here is $100 million from future tolls. So again, with the approval of the toll authority, then BAFA, MTC can start looking at a financing mechanism for us to hopefully get access to $100 million of future toll funds early ahead of construction, so that we can apply that towards construction. But that process would take some time. But with the toll authority approval, then we can start that process. Now that does leave us with $250 million of future funding, and we are competing for a number of grants, both at the federal and the state level. One of the big one is the first one on the bullets, SB1 funding program. So this includes the Solutions for Congested Corridor as well as the Trade Corridor program. Last year we submitted a total request of $150 million between those two programs, and the announcement is expected to be made by the CTC later this month. So keeping our fingers crossed that that we can get something out of the SB1 program. And last but not least, we are planning to compete for a number of other programs coming up. One of those is the USDOT Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant, MPDG. So that has like several major programs under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the one that we are targeting for is the Rural Service Transportation Program grant. So that's one that we'll be applying for. I think the call for projects is probably going to come out later this month. Additionally, we are also planning to apply for a couple of the resiliency related grants. One of those is also under the USDOT program called Protect. The other is under the CTC program called the Local Transportation Climate Adaptation Program. Now, those are climate adaptation related grants. I do want to mention that as part of this near-term project does provide near-term resiliency. One of those I'd like to mention is the Tulare Creek Bridge, for example. There's been a lot of requests from the resource agencies for us to lengthen the existing bridge so that it can enable a lot of the planned restoration as part of the Sonoma Baylands strategy. So the current bridge is just too narrow. So without a new bridge, those restoration efforts would not be possible. So that's a really a project that we look forward to coordinate with all the resource agencies to advance forward. And another one is called the Strip Marsh East. That's kind of like south of the highway on the Solano side of the corridor. That by improving that Strip Marsh East area, it can really help serve as a nature-based solution for a near-term adaptation strategy. So just want to mention a couple of those examples that the project does improve near-term resiliency on this corridor so that we can apply for some of those grants. Next, please. Here's my last slide. I just want to show you where we are with the overall project schedule. So what I'm circling here is where we are right now. We are just ready to get started with the final design phase. So the plan here is that MTC will be working with Caltrans as an integrated team to basically complete the design phase of the project. I think we're waiting for maybe one more signature on this collaborative agreement, and then we should be ready to go later this month to start the design work. At the same time, I mentioned about those two things in terms of the Tulare Creek Bridge and the Strip Marsh East. The plan here is that we would start the environmental review process to clear those components. So they're kind of happening concurrently. So the design work for the main project, but then for the Tulare Creek and the Strip Marsh, we need to first clear the environmental review of those elements. And then the plan here is that later on in the design process, we'll catch up those elements with the rest of the project so that we can deliver them all together. Hopefully, we can start construction in 2025 and complete that in 2027. So that's the game plan right now. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Mayor McConnell.
Thank you. As a personal privilege, I do have to depart for a flag raising ceremony for the LGBTQ community, but I do want to make this one point. You articulated that you would be considering regional differences in setting of the toll. The challenge will be in the definition of regional differences. I would urge you to take a look at zip code differences. Certainly the difference between a zip code income of 94589 versus 94592, even here in the city of Vallejo, is probably $15,000 per year. And if you compared it to other areas of the region of Solano County, it's as high as $30,000 a year. So in defining regional, I would really urge you to do it by zip code approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Supervisor Rica.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Just a couple questions. There's certainly a lot of interest around the design phase from a public standpoint. I know when we were going through the EIR, there was conversations about how do we make sure we're doing all the public outreach and including the public. Can you talk a little bit more about what the plans are for that once this agreement gets signed and how the public can participate or be aware throughout the design phase?
Yeah, I think one obvious form is definitely this policy committee meetings. So hopefully, we'll continue to provide updates to you all and then make it available to the public. And I think also as part of the tolling discussion, I think I think there's going to be additional venues that we can engage the public to get input as we define that, especially like the toll discount program and how the tolling is going to be rolled out. And then I think with the rest of the design work, I think Caltrans might have a way of providing public information. We actually, I think we have a couple of websites that we do maintain on a regular basis. So I mean, those are the things I can name on top of my head, and ways that we can continue to engage the public moving forward. But yeah, I don't know if Dina, you have any additional input.
So is this on? Yeah. So what Kevin provided is correct. So in addition to that, also, I just want to remind everyone that the Tulare Creek and the Strip Marsh project is still going to go through the environmental fees, which by law we have to provide public commenting on. But it's also our intent to go above and beyond what's required of us. There's a lot of interest on State Route 37, so we may have just engagement meetings in addition to what's required also on those. During the design phase, we'll be working with various stakeholders and the cities along the corridors, as well as the 4 North counties. So we'll have that communication ongoing as soon as we have enough on paper to share with them. But also we intend to have that also at 65% design, 95% design, which is standard practice for Caltrans.
That'd be great. There's certainly a lot of interest about the location of the tolling, Tolley Creek Bridge, 121 interchange, the resiliency impacts and components of the project. So that's great. The second question with regards to the environmental phase for the Tolley Creek Bridge, will that include potentially the ultimate height as well in that environmental phase to look at that, or is the ultimate height, whether at the interim level or the ultimate, is that something you look at in EIR in terms of height?
Yeah. Yeah. So remember we, I think it was maybe a couple months ago, we have a partnering agreement that we've been able to, I guess, put together and then got the agreement on from some of the key partners and resource agencies. And I think one of the commitments for us to look at is, forgot exactly how it was phrased, but things that we should consider in the interim project that could be potentially considered as a phase towards the ultimate project. Maybe that's your question. So as part of the Tolley Creek Bridge assessment, it's something that we'll be working on with the resource agencies on in terms of, what are the pros and cons of doing it at the current elevation as opposed to the long-term elevation. When you consider things like, the physical constraint, the right-of-way constraints on both sides of the bridge, there's a railroad tracks over there. And there's other property owners on the other on both sides of the corridor. So I think a lot of those considerations are going to be discussed and evaluated as part of the initial process, especially in collaboration with some of the key resource agencies as well. So I guess the short answer is that yes, we'll be looking at it as part of this process.
Great, thank you.
Comments? Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you. I just wanted to tack on to Supervisor Lucan's question around outreach. And I'm glad to hear that you'll be doing robust outreach. I'm just curious to know, I didn't hear about consulting with the tribal governments prior to the EIR being completed. But one of the comments that I consistently hear back from their intergov people is that they prefer to be consulted before the project is completed and the public comment period is open. And I'm wondering if you have any ability to incorporate that request.
Yeah, we certainly are doing that right now, Councilmember Fleming. I think it's very important for us to consult with the tribes on State Route 37. On the interim B project, we did not do enough consultation with them in the environmental phase. And we had a meeting after completing the environmental document with them to see what we can do better next time. So there was a lot of discussion around lessons learned and what we can do better in terms of robust communication. So definitely we're working with them, not only on the interim B project, but all the various phases of State Route 37 resilience projects, which is the long-term or the ultimate projects as well, on our radar for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
That's a great comment. Anybody else? Supervisor Corner? Do you have any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. I'm gonna just kind of throw I don't think it's a wild idea, but maybe something that we could work on the next couple of months. And that is, we, the policy committee, talk about SR 37 in a room. We've driven over SR 37, but we don't really know all of the points on both ends of the road that we're trying to fix. And so I'm wondering if having a bus tour, look over at our executive directors, of the policy committee members, that would probably take up a lot of one day. But to travel SR 37 with our MTC Caltrans experts who, looking at all of these points of concern and issues from one end of the corridor to the other end of the corridor. So we have a hands-on idea of really what is being discussed, what it's looking like. I mean, this conversation around the toll gantry, I have so many questions, I'm like, why doesn't it start at Mare Island or somewhere, so I think that would be very informative for all of us. I don't know what our policy committee members think, but I would like to hear your what your thoughts are about that idea. Our next meeting isn't until October. And I thought as this might be something that would be better done like August or September. I think MTC is in recess in October or in August. Is that correct? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to look at our EDs over here and see what they have to say about that idea. It would obviously have to include public as well.
So coincidentally, we have a state route 37 communications.
I can't hear you, Daryl. He sits the farthest away.
Coincidentally, we have a State Route 37 communications team that's led by Bartney at Caltrans. It meets almost every week, talks about how do we best communicate to the public about 37. And one of the conversations has been about doing a tour of 37. The focus was going to be on state legislators and others that are affected. But I think with all the new members, it'd be good to start with you guys first, get everybody up to speed, because there's a lot going on. So Kevin's touching on a lot of different things, but I mean, the good news is we have tolling authority. That's huge. And now we've got a starting point, and now we've got a lot of work to do. And so I think if we can better understand, convey to you guys what's out there, what's going on, where's Toll Lake Creek, what's going on in Mare Island, what's happening here, there, all the corridors, there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of partners participating, but I think, and I think we can do a lot of this stuff in parallel. So Kevin's side of the design, we want that to keep moving forward. Later on the agenda, we're going to talk about next projects. What are the next projects? We're going to have to start picking. We can't do everything. And so we got to start advancing stuff. But if you advance too much, nothing gets done. So we want to make sure we stay on focused what we're doing. But if you guys want a tour, we can ask the communications team. I'm sure Bartney would love this organize something. Looking at Dina.
I mean, I think before you take our state and federal agents out there, I think we all need a tour first. I mean,
agree.
Like I said, we talk about this in a room and we're not really on site. And I can envision this tour as being, we stop at Toll Lake Creek, we get out, we take a look at it. We stop at all these parts and pieces and come all the way through the whole corridor and get an idea of what are the challenges, what are some of the advantages we have in terms of this work. So we too can speak positively and, with good authority versus kind of being just downloaded stuff, right? Because we've seen it, we touched it.
We'd be happy to do that.
Oh, great.
It looks like half your members are new, so I think the timing's pretty good.
Yeah, we have a lot of new membership. And I think that would be a great opportunity. So for Mayor McConnell, just so you know, I'm bringing forward a bus tour of SR 37 for policy committee members and the public. And Supervisor Moulton.
Yeah, Chair Hannigan, I want to compliment you. I've thought a tour would be a good idea for a long time. And I know as we are balancing the environmental concerns with the user needs, I think it's particularly important we see both sets of issues on this tour and really get a deep understanding of what the issues are. So yes, hats off. And if I could, I wasn't aware that we had a communications team. And I'd actually like to suggest that they give regular public facing reports at these meetings because we've got great design people all here in the room, but I think the public facing aspect is so important that I'm glad to know we have this team. And I think bringing those updates as to what the outreach has been and what's been learned would be very helpful to me personally, and maybe the rest of the commission.
I would agree. This first I heard as well. I mean, I'm glad it's happening, but I think it would be important to hear or at least see some of the communications that's going out that would affect either our decision-making, which I don't know, I think that there's much of that, but it would be important to know. Councilmember Fleming, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that suggestion and thank staff for their willingness to do that. I think one of the things that's difficult, I've crossed State Route 37 tons of times. We talk about these points and I don't really have like an actual tactile sense of either the engineering or environmental sense. I get a pretty good sense of the traffic because you can see it with your eyes, but I think that that you all might assume that that we have a deeper understanding, and it's not like us to admit that we don't know, but I'll admit it. I don't know exactly what you're talking about on each of these points, and I really do want to know so that I can be an informed decision maker. So thank you so much for that suggestion.
Dina, did you want to speak? Go ahead.
Daryl already said it. We were very happy to actually organize that. And I think it's going to be really beneficial because there's just so many moving parts that we want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind in terms of communication. And maybe I may suggest that we can add a regular item to this agenda as outreach that is going on. Maybe our communication team can report to you on what we've done in outreach.
Yeah, I think that would be great. In terms of what is that public communication? What is going on? Where is that? Can we be linked to that information that's going out, just so we're aware? We're public facing to the public, so they're going to come with us with things that it's important that we are well informed. So thank you for that. All right, Kevin, we hijacked your little presentation. Appreciate the updates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead, Drew. Go ahead.
I do have a few members of the public online wishing to speak. All right, and we will start with Kate Powers. Kate, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you, Drew. My name is Kate Powers. I'm with Marine Conservation League, and we support the position of the State Route 37 Baylands group. And I just wanted to request that as the project moves into the final design and permitting phase, that we consider all the options for accelerating towards the ultimate project, both for flood risk management and for wetland restoration, because the ultimate project has some self-mitigating environmental improvements to it, that wherever the interim project, and I'm thinking particularly to Supervisor Lucan's comments about both raising the bridge, the Tole Creek Bridge, as well as lengthening it, that we support logical, substantial steps at each phase of the interim projects towards implementation of the causeway, and that by doing so, by accelerating towards the causeway and looking for opportunities for that in the design phase, it may change the environmental compliance and permitting aspects of the project. So I'm hoping that Caltrans will be considering that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next we have is David Schoenbrunn. David, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm David Schoenbrunn, president of the Train Riders Association of California and Transdef. And I wanted to give committee members some context here. I've been observing the MTC for 30 years now. Its focus during that entire time has been congestion. And yet, at no point during that time have they ever accomplished any results that reduced congestion. And that's because of a failure to understand that congestion is a result of an unpriced transportation system. The very notion of a freeway creates congestion when there are enough when there's enough demand to use that free space. So when MTC tells you that they're going to fix congestion, they have no evidence whatsoever to back that up. I'd like to comment that each of you has expressed concern about the need to reduce travel times now. I presented an earlier version of this committee with a proposal to put a reversible lane using a movable median barrier several years ago. Committee members tasked MTC with reviewing that proposal, including the assertions I made that a lot of CEQA exemptions could be used such that within a year, a movable median barrier could be in place. Caltrans, in its infinite wisdom, insisted on imposing its design handbook instead of recognizing that this is the ultimate situation for using a context-sensitive approach. The proposal that we put forward had no widening, no filling, and therefore no environmental impacts. And so when they tell you that they'll have something to reduce congestion in 5 years, you have several reasons to be highly skeptical of those assertions on top of what Mr. Bertelbaum said earlier. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have in line is Ed Schulze. Ed, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Kevin, maybe a comment based upon Supervisor Lucan's comments. When you do modify this or whatever, if you're gonna do the fill or the overhead, can you modify the 121 intersection to eliminate the lights whenever you move forward with anything right now? Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Hannigan, I don't see any other members of the public who wish to speak.
Great, thank you, Drew.
Or online, that is. My apologies.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Steve Bertelbaum again. In terms of the tolling, I think you want to maintain some public, you want to inform the public about the tolling issues. So far, we've heard that the toll will be $7 or $8 per trip, one way, and you split that, it'll be half of that one way and half of the other, depending on whether you toll in one direction or in both directions. What they discovered when they're trying to lower vehicle miles traveled, and we have a 25% reduction that the ARB is asking us to reduce VMT. The toll has to be dynamic. It has to go up as the number of vehicles increases and go down as the number of vehicles decreases. In Washington, when they tried this in order to control congestion, they found that the toll initially had to go up to $40 in order to get people to pay attention and moved into public transit or carpools. Eventually that declined to about $30. But if we're going to control congestion with a toll, the $7 or $8 toll is probably not going to do it. So I think we want to be clear with the public about which we're going to do here. We have heard from some of the experts that the higher the toll is, the less money you get. The lower the toll is, the more money you get. So the choice has to be made somewhere in here about how to find the sweet spot between reducing congestion and getting the money that we need in order to build a project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public speakers on this topic? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4.2, long-term projects. And the flood reduction project is first with Javier Mendeville speaking. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Javier Mendeville. I'm the Caltrans Regional Project Manager for SR 37, and I'll be providing updates for the flood reduction project. So just a reminder, as part of the environmental document, we're clearing SR 37 between US 101 and Atherton Avenue. And we've identified the Novato Creek Bridge replacement as the first constructible package. So updates on schedule, we're planning on, we've we've made updates to the schedule. We're planning on circulating the draft environmental document and draft project report sometime in August. So we'll likely have a public meeting towards the end of August. And we're planning on delivering the final environmental document and completing the environmental phase in December. And we'll have a public meeting then as well. And that concludes my updates. Any questions?
Any committee members have questions in regards to these projects? Vice Chair Lucan.
Just one, because I don't know if Javier or maybe Dina wants to speak to it. I know a month or two ago, we did have a meeting that involves SMART and trying to talk about, as SMART does an EIR, how it might be able to catch up to this. I thought that update might be good for the whole board. So I don't know if Javier or Dina, if you want to maybe just provide an update on kind of the two different paths we're working on that regards.
Yeah, I will take that one up here. So yes, we've been having conversations with SMART on how we can catch them up in terms of the environmental documents so that they can meet us at the design phase for this project for the first constructible package, which is Nevada Creek. But the intent is to also have SMART as part of our regular project meetings for all segment A projects, as we're advancing that right now. We've got, and maybe not everybody on this council remember that, but we've completed a PEL study for State Route 37 that stands for Planning and Environmental Linkage. And it identified how we're gonna address the resiliency issues on State Route 37 long-term. And one of the outcomes of that study is really implementable packages. So we are phasing, I think it's 8 phases, Javier, that we have on the PEL. And the first one is, or I shouldn't say the first one because we haven't really prioritized them, but the western segment of State Route 37 is definitely a priority because of the flooding. So we want to make sure that we're working with SMART and aligning well with all their work in this space so that we're not duplicating efforts. We don't have any missed opportunities.
Good morning, Policy Committee. Bill Gamlin, Chief Engineer with SMART. I have some remarks that I was going to make as part of my update, which is in the next item. So I can handle that then.
Sounds good. Thanks for the update. And Bill, I know you're teed up for the next item then. But I thought it'd be good for the committee to know that, SMART is working to catch up. We'll hear a lot more about that in a little bit.
Any other committee members have questions? All right. Thank you so much, Javier.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update. And then we'll move on to the SMART update. We'll roll right in. Bill, go ahead.
Good morning again. Thanks for the opportunity here for our General Manager, Eddie Cummins, this morning. I'd like to start by providing an update on the reconstruction of the at-grade railroad crossing that SMART did 2 weeks ago. This was right by 121 by the Sonoma Raceway. If you recall, we had a 32-hour shutdown planned. We had a great effort, great contractor, great support, and opened the roadway 7 hours early on Sunday morning. So it went really well. Would very much like to thank our partnership with District 4, who was very supportive in making the closures happen and supportive in all the work. So first update. Moving on to the resiliency program, SMART is currently working with the Caltrans Division of Rail and Mass Transit, and we're looking at operational simulations and modeling for an east-west line. So that would be from the existing SMART alignment near Novato, near the Hamilton station. Heading east, we're looking at a couple alignments, travel times, looking at a shuttle service, through service to Fairfield Sassoon, and possibly even what that might look like with through service to Sacramento. So that effort is going to inform what we do in a project study report. So we hope to start that effort also with the Department of Rail and Mass Transit, probably in the July timeframe. And that will then lead us into or tee us up to do an environmental document for the segment A portion of the work that would try and catch us up to the work that the department's doing in the flood reduction project, focusing a lot on that area around Novato Creek, which we also suffer a lot of flooding as well. So that's kind of a brief update of where we are. Happy to answer any questions.
Go to my committee members and see if they have any questions in regards to your report. Seeing none, Supervisor Gorin.
Thanks for the report.
All right. Do we have any public comments here in the room? And then seeing none, I'll look at Drew. Anybody on the?
I'm not seeing any members of the public with their hands up on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update. And to climate change, I think this is, one of those options that could potentially be viable for SR 37. So thank you so much. And then project prioritization with the asterisks. That's interesting. Jeanette Wiseman. There we are.
Hi, Jeanette Wiseman, State Route 37 Corridor Program Manager with MTC, supporting the Resilient 37 program. So I wanted to go into a little more detail on the rest of the long-term project prioritization. As Director Eltwanzi noted, the flood reduction project is correctly our first long-term project. And although we have a lot of work to do for the rest of the segments, that was the one, as you guys may remember, or those who have been participating for a while, that was already in the planning phase. And we took a pause during the planning and environmental linkages study in order to find the conclusion and then adjust the flood reduction project from an interim project to the long-term elevation. So that's why we are moving forward with that first off. Next slide. So this is from the Caltrans Planning and Environmental Linkages Study that was completed December 2022. This is the implementation plan that identified 8 discrete projects that will address the long-term resilience needs of State Route 37, but which have a specific discrete purpose and function. So these are just listed 1 through 8 without an existing prioritization, though you'll see number 2, just going west to east, just to clarify. Number 2 is that flood reduction project. And now the team's job is to figure out how we're going to deliver the rest of these projects and to do them as quickly, expeditiously, effectively as possible, merging the many considerations that we have along the corridor. And you'll see to the right that there are, varying costs to each of these projects. Altogether, the estimate in 2022 dollars is $11 billion. So part of what we need to work on as a team and in coordination with the public and stakeholders is how we can and should make this happen and recognize the benefits and really the pressing needs to the corridors, the users, and then the Baylands restoration, which is very much tied to the long-term resilience as well. Next slide, please. So how are we going to go about that? We're working hard and kind of setting the stage and the next steps towards that. So internally amongst our Resilient State Route 37 program partners, we are going to be evaluating prioritizations or considerations that includes flood vulnerability. And that's one of the reasons why the flood reduction project was already lined up, because of the pressing concerns around that in those low-lying areas. There's also numerous transportation considerations. Certainly equity is a prime consideration. And then there's going to be aspects that we have to figure out around the connectivity, constructability, phasing opportunities, and how we can deliver on the funding. And part of this is once again going to be the restoration considerations. What is happening and what are the needs in the Baylands group coordination and their efforts, because they really do come together to great benefit and in many ways are independent. So we are going to be, towards our internal deliberation, of which there will be an external, that's the lower portion, but to continue with how we're going to evaluate the practicality of delivering this program. We've recently received a US DOT Bureau Build America Bureau grant called the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator Grant. And it is intended to support major infrastructure efforts such as State Route 37 to really figure out innovative financing and project delivery. And so we have this initial grant money, but like tied to the grant money is the connection with DOT and Build America resources and other regional infrastructure accelerator grantees in trying to work on major infrastructure projects in the US using the infrastructure law, bipartisan infrastructure law funding to its maximum effectiveness, and really navigating things like permitting and planning most effectively. So there's really kind of like a brain trust associated with it. I'm really excited about that opportunity. And I'm mentioning it under funding, financing, and delivery because one of the things that we are using the funding towards is getting a consultant on board to help us really understanding the financing considerations and how that will help us build together our funding plan, piecing together the $11 billion 2022 dollars and figuring out when and how we can accomplish it. So there's a lot of good work that's about, we're about to really jump off in and dive into. We're really excited about. We hope to have a contractor on board to help support this effort in the next month or two. We're actively working on that. And we're going to continue working on the considerations, and then we're going to be engaging the public and stakeholders as part of this process. And so the State Route 37 partnership agreement that Kevin brought up earlier, which was completed January 25th of this year, which was an agreement amongst state leadership, CalSTA, CNRA, and then the implementing agencies, BCDC, CDFW, the District 4, and then also MTC, really set off a list of commitments for our near and long-term priorities at State Route 37. And we're now starting to work on that engagement. You guys were talking about the importance of connecting with the public and stakeholders to help develop the projects moving forward. And so we are going to be working on that. In fact, we have an upcoming meeting with restoration groups and the tribes. We've reached out to the tribes and will continue to do so as part of that process to start sharing and getting input on this next steps, both with Sears Point to Mare Island and then also the long-term projects. So I think that's all I have for you guys today, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
Committee members, Supervisor? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Janet. I wondered the brain trust that you have access to through this DOT grant, that's exciting. I just wondered, does that brain trust also include design expertise, or is it just in case there's other models out there that could be useful for us to look at?
Right. So there's a number of different programs or different grantees that are out around the country who have received this Regional Infrastructure Accelerator grant, and they apply to a variety of different infrastructure projects. And so we actually met recently and heard some of those projects and some of those examples. They include project and program managers who then have to take into consideration the design development process, varying constraints in terms of working through challenges, be it topographical, community concerns, et cetera. So that is certainly part of the broader team that each of these RIA recipients bring with them.
So I guess what I would say is, and Dina, I know you know this too, is that I'm certainly looking for a design that maximizes the restoration aspects. Super important. And so I want to make sure that every opportunity we thread this needle the best we can. So that's what I wanted to understand. So it sounds like sort of we get design, but and models to look at of some sort, but that your focus is largely financing is what I'm hearing.
Well, actually, there is a innovative project delivery component to our evaluation as well. So looking at ways that we can deliver the projects more effectively. And I think the kind of thoughtful process for how we design it is going to be an important consideration. And there may be some efficiencies or some additional benefits that we can achieve by thinking outside of the box. One of the things that we're looking to do as part of this funding is to have a international outreach. We've used sounding, that's probably the wrong word, but reaching out internationally to learn from other design expertise and ideas from the broader worldwide community. So we certainly think that we can and should be able to learn from other programs, other projects, and thinking, the best thinking that's out there. And I agree, the restoration considerations, while the Pell did a lot of work in getting to that causeway, there's going to be more to come. So we hope to be able to do that.
Thank you. Questions? Any other commissioners? Oh, go ahead, Dina.
I just want to add to what Jeanette mentioned regarding the prioritization of the project. One of the things that we need to definitely consider while we're prioritizing the corridor is funding opportunities with our environmental partners as well. Because of the environmental restoration component of it, I think that the team will also be focused on how do we bring our environmental partners to the table, see what opportunities they see and how that can play out in prioritizing our projects as well.
Vice Chair Lucan.
I appreciate that, because certainly with the protect funds and others, there's that fine balance of introducing more resiliency allows access to potentially more dollars and earlier on, and finding that balance. Looking at the 8 different Pell segments, projects that we've identified, in some areas we're going straight to the ultimate, like the Nevada Creek Bridge. Other areas we're starting with the interim, but then we also have some overlap, particularly with section, I believe it was number 6, which is the 121 interchange, where we're currently doing some work in design phase that will tie into the interim project in segment B, but then we also know we've got an ultimate project there. So how does the current design work that's happening around the 121 interchange kind of tie into this ultimate when we're ready to kick that off with environmental?
Right. Well, yeah, let me continue on with that response that Kevin had initially provided to make sure it's clear. As part of our Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project commitments, we have agreed to, and really carrying out the partnership agreement from January, to evaluate long-term the viability of integrating or facilitating long-term design as part of that project, the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. We have some kind of like gates or channels to what we would consider as part of that evaluation, with the recognition that the project needs to proceed and to stick with our current project delivery timeline, that 2025 construction and then completion in 2027. So to look at it currently through those lens, we are going to be embarking now in the PS&E stage, that final permitting and project design stage of the project that we will be starting on, and looking at ways that we could do a long-term design as part of the project. And that is also looking at the Tole Creek Bridge replacement project and feature. And so that is both responsibility of the transportation agencies to review the design considerations, the practicalities of the planning or the CEQA-NEPA process, and what the implications of doing that work would be. And then also working with our regulatory staff partners. We have a monthly meeting with them to talk through the opportunities, understand potential challenges or constraints. And so the interchange comes into place as part of that Tole Creek Bridge elevation consideration, because if we go to the long-term elevation, that 2130 floodplain clearance, we have to go above SMART and we come in much higher, and that triggers the State Route 121 interchange. So we're looking through that right now, but we recognize that that is its own project with a lengthy development in and of itself. And so there is a lot of challenges with bringing into a near-term project. But we're looking at that now, and then also looking at, to be clear, not only is there the potential for integrating, there's also opportunities to facilitate or expedite it when we move forward if we're not able to do it as part of the near-term project. So that's the other part of the commitment and what our team is working on.
It sounds so complex. And to the caller's point around the lights at 121 and 37, with the interim plan, my understanding is it's we'll have a turning circle, roundabout. Thank you. And is that something that would stay, or is that part of that decision-making process? Because that's a short-term fix. But in the long term, curious as to how that fits in. And you just mentioned the elevation changes that will trigger whatever happens there at 121 and 37.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know whether that roundabout is still part of the proposal. There's intersection improvements. Can I bring Kevin up to speak
Sure.
to that?
Yeah, no, I'm waiting to see this thing.
Yeah,
It's gonna be huge.
I mean, I have a concrete answer, but I think for the most part, for the interim project, it's going to be more like a fairly minor at-grade improvement at the intersection to improve the traffic operations, as opposed to a major do-over. I think actually the funding available for that is actually not very significant, as far as I know.
Maybe Ricky can come up and talk a little bit about the project scope for them.
Sure. Ricky Gao, I'm the division chief for project management north from Caltrans. So for the 121 intersection improvement project, the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project actually covers that intersection footprint. So that's why we have one environmental document, final environmental document, cover the entire stretch, and which is the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project, and also covers the 121 intersection project. And the idea is once the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project, the bigger project, is fully funded, or after the SB1 funding is voted in June of this year by the CTC, then we'll seek to combine both project and funding together to fulfill the funding commitment as in the SB1 application, as well as the project report. So that's the idea. And to answer your question, Supervisor Hannigan, I believe we shared to the policy committee previously, it will not be a roundabout. Most likely it will be the, like Kevin said, the intersection improvement with signals. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I was kind of excited about a big old roundabout. But with the elevation changes, I can see where that could be problematic.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Do we have any callers?
Supervisor Gorin.
Supervisor Gorin. Oh, she's got her hand up. Great. Go ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you, Aaron, for the question. And so the question, it's been a while, but we were, it was suggested that with the regional measure 3, there would be funding to design the roundabout at that intersection of 121 and 37, or at least to advance the design. You know, I'm not sure that a signal is going to help traffic at all at that location unless it's combined with additional lanes or leading to a roundabout in the near term. It's just more of the same of what we have.
If you wanted to respond.
Yeah.
Kevin Chen with MTC. So I guess the main cause of traffic congestion to the 121 intersection is really the fact that the highway next down from 2 lanes down to 1. So that's the main cause of problem. I mean, the intersection itself can be a little bit more efficient, but the main problem of the bottleneck is really where it necks down from 2 lanes down to 1. And that's why it's really important for the Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project to proceed, be able to provide the additional HOV lane to really provide the capacity that's needed. Now, with the intersection improvement, we can make some modifications so that it can operate a little bit more efficiently with the main project. So I just wanted to share that point.
And can I ask another question? Will there be a dedicated left-hand turn lane turning north past the raceway up to Sonoma Valley? Because unless we have that and a preventing traffic from going in that lane and then going back onto the lanes going straight, it's going to be more of the same.
Sorry, are you talking about like the eastbound?
I'm talking about the eastbound traffic that now queues up at that light, and the restriping that happened several years ago just made the challenges worse. More traffic is now using Lakeville Highway and Stage Gulch as the pass-through because of the queue up at that intersection. It might be the traffic queuing up for straight, but there's a lot of traffic turning left that could flow more easily if in fact you made sure that it was a dedicated left-hand turn lane for some distance at that light.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, I think the challenge in the past is that without the separation, a lot of folks were using the left lane and then jumping back into the right lane to continue east. And that causes a lot of driver frustration or whatnot. So I think the restriping is to help address that issue. And then with the interim project, I guess that's going to be a dedicated left turn lane. Again, it's going to be separated from the through movement. But in addition, remember we are providing an HOV lane, and that HOV lane will be introduced west of the intersection so that we can get the buses and HOVs a queue jump opportunity to bypass the queues approaching the intersection. So that actually serves as an additional buffer to the left turn traffic. So that should be an improvement as well.
Thank you. I recognize the complexity of the design of this key intersection, and we're all wishing Caltrans good luck in designing that. I wanted to actually see a roundabout or a traffic circle at this intersection. Is that going to be designed into the ultimate project?
Yeah. So I think with the long-term project, there's going to be a lot more work in terms of figuring out what that configuration is going to be. It's going to be grade separated, I think, for the most part, and whether it's going to be a roundabout or not, I think that's to be determined. I think with roundabout, there's opportunities, but there's also constraints with the railroad tracks adjacent to it. Currently, I think that's probably one of the challenge. But in terms of the long-term improvement, if it's grade separated with direct connectors, that might allow traffic to flow a lot smoother in that area.
And thank you. And I'll just iterate, there's a lot of traffic turning into Sonoma Valley and Napa Valley along this corridor. So anything, and I said before, the frustration is now getting off early at Lakeville, producing congestion there on the stagecoach. So I await to see improvements soon.
Thank you, Susan. Supervisor Gregory.
It's just a little more on this as the Napa rep. My relationship with this intersection is wanting to get to that little turn lane that's way up there, and to get home. I wonder, Supervisor Gorin used the word cut through traffic, and that's true. I see it as a viable bypass. That being Lakeville to 116 really should be a viable bypass for me to get home. I see often the problem is at 116, 121, that red blinking light kind of blows my mind. We still have a red blinking light this day and age. Has that ever been discussed as part of an interim or ultimate project related to that 121-37 intersection?
Maybe I can answer this question. So there was like I said, there is a project 121 intersection improvement project
but we will combine with the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project because the bigger projects does cover this scope and will contribute the funding with the bigger project, the Sears Point to Mare Island. And also I want to go back to Supervisor Gorman's question about the roundabout. We did have a comparison and traffic operation analysis study, compare the roundabout continuous T intersection and extend the lanes. What we found out is, like Kevin mentioned, the congestion is not mainly caused by the intersection, is because of the bottleneck down the stream. The road narrows from 2 lane to 1 lane, and that's the main cause of the congestion. Not much, I mean, we can do some improvement at the intersection, but the traffic congestion will not be totally addressed until the Sears Point to Mare Island improvement project completes and remove the bottleneck and make the 2 through lane and all the way for that 9.5 mile stretch. So that's why it's crucial for the segment B project to be there. And for the ultimate project, likely there will be, we'll have to analyze the height for the projected sea level rise and decide what kind of interchange and also compound with the smart railroad. So it's a lot more to consider. We can certainly consider roundabout, but with the interchange, so it could be different.
Let me clarify. I was asking about the intersection at 116, 121, the red blinking light affixed there could make the interim, while we wait, it could make it a lot better for Napa and Sonoma.
Okay, noted. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
And Ryan, this is Susan Gorin. The intersection of 116 and 121 will have a traffic circle. Thank you so much, James and SCTA and Caltrans for working through that. And I think construction may begin this year. And I hope that that roundabout will improve the queue ups from Napa County and north through that intersection. And I would just love to have a whole series of roundabouts and traffic circles. Other people managed to figure out how to use them and drive them and move traffic forward. Thanks, James, for all your work on that intersection. Soon. When is soon, James?
Bids open July 29, and the roundabout itself will be open in 2024.
Love it. Thank you.
Do we have any callers, Drew?
We do.
Okay, great.
So I currently see 3 members of the public with their hands up, and we will start with Joe Green-Heffer. Joe, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Yes, this is Joe Green-Heffernan from Fairfield. I'm a civil engineer. One item I haven't really heard discussed in terms of the prioritization, given the long time frame for all these projects and the increasing risk and duration of flooding and sea level rise concerns, what planning is going in to basically emergency planning for longer term shutdowns of this roadway while all this work is being done? You know, it's highly likely there will be more frequent and longer duration shutdowns of Highway 37, and that's going to have a big impact that may be a law enforcement issue, a transportation issue, an employment issue. So is there contingency planning being considered for the coming decade or more while this work's being done? Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have in line is David Schonbrun. David, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
David Schonbrun with the Train Riders Association of California. I want to refer to the big picture of the fiscal context in which this project exists. It's my opinion that an $11 billion project here is unfundable, and that all of the efforts going on here today and from the inception of this project will end up being for naught, that the state will ultimately decide that it simply can't come up with the funds for this project. When we look at the current state deficit, when we look at the transit operating deficits, when we look at the federal deficit, when we look at the oncoming recession, and there are many who say we're facing a depression coming up. Projects of this scale are simply unfundable, I believe. We presented a very low-cost method of providing train service that would be able to stay up out of the tidal challenges and provide a necessary link when Highway 37 goes underwater. But nobody, at least so far, has been struck by a sense of the need for urgency and low cost. To us, those are the two most important considerations right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have in the line is Ed Schultze. Ed, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Jeanette, can I throw that slide up again that, or Drew slowed up, that showed the different sections between 101 and 80? It's possible. If not, my concern was the section 4, which is from, I think it's from Black Point over to the 121 intersection. They didn't mention the Lakeville intersection there, and that's a major intersection for traffic. No, that's it. Section 4. It does not have any annotation for the Lakeville intersection, which is a major source of not only residential, but commercial traffic going north. That is a very important thing that isn't even mentioned in there. I think you got to reconsider that section 4 and install an intersection there. Very important. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ed. Chair Hannigan, I don't see any other members of the public with their hands up.
Great, thank you, Drew. And come on up, please. Sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. Tom Conlon. I would like to, if you could, put the long-term project prioritization slide back up, Ms. Weissman's slide. Had some questions that I think would be helpful if that were in front of us while I speak. I am trying to make sense of this process, and what I see in that slide on the long-term priorities, I appreciate that there is attention. I'm sorry, that was the previous slide that was just up there. Not this one. This one here, the evaluate priorities. If I understand this, I'm trying to understand this as a set of criteria. That may not be correct, but I see very clearly here adaptation, climate change adaptation priorities well reflected in this list of prioritization criteria. I do not see greenhouse gas mitigation priorities reflected. If I'm integrating the conversation to date, I hear most of our greenhouse gas mitigation is going to be coming from tolling, which we think is a great idea, and from transit, which could be funded by tolling, but I have not yet heard commitments of an allocation of tolling budget to transit yet. So it's something I'm looking forward to. But I would think that would be in the transportation considerations, but I don't see it called out. And so the takeaway for me at this point is that most of the effort of this infrastructure investment, and yes, $11 billion, is to achieve vulnerability protections, but we're not necessarily fully committed to making progress on our GHG mitigation obligations under the international protocol and whatnot. So I'd like to have that issue elevated in the conversation if possible. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that. We are at the end of our agenda. And we're at committee member comments and staff updates. So we'll start with Ryan. Do you have an update for the committee by chance?
No.
Any comments you'd like to make?
No, just great first meeting. I heard a lot about the work you guys have been doing here, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I'll keep it.
Happy to have you
that.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lucan.
Actually, it's probably more for a future topic, just to throw something into the parking lot here. We did get the letter about ferry service. And I know in the last TIR CP funding, there was some sizable investments in I think electric ferries. So it might be good as a parking lot item to just get an update from this in this committee, not anytime soon, just about, future of ferry service potentially along this corridor.
We've had conversations about that in the past, and we can bring some of those back up. So
Thank
all right, Councilmember Colbert.
Yeah, I just want to say, I really appreciate your suggestion of a tour. I've been driving across 37 and I'm sort of trying to figure out where I am relative to all this sort of policy stuff. So I think it's a really great idea and looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Happy to have you here. Supervisor Milton Peters, good to see you back.
Thank you, Chair. Good meeting. Glad to be back.
Thank you. Mayor McConnell.
Thank you for the discussion. I'm looking forward to moving forward to the occurrences that impact the eastern side more than the western side, but I recognize that they're quite a ways away. I would like to have a continuing dialogue with staff about some of the concerns of this side of the bay. So I'll look forward to keeping our dialogue open. Thank you.
Sure. And then Supervisor Gorin. Any comments?
Great meeting. Thank you, Chair, for organizing a great discussion with 6 of you.
And then I'll look to our executive directors.
think
Other
we have
than
our
what we've heard
direction.
today, I really appreciate the agenda. I want to thank Drew and the team and Manny, who's behind the screen here. You can't see him. So the city of Vallejo, for all of your efforts in getting this place livened up so we can have a wonderful meeting, be interactive as well. That's wonderful. You can see the future topics. Vice Chair Lucan had placed one on there. If you have any other suggestions for additions, please contact your staff at your agency. That would be great. And with that, our next meeting is scheduled for October 5th from 9:30 to 11. I'm hoping before that time, we'll have a bus tour. We'll have an opportunity to get together and drive the corridor itself. And hear firsthand and look exactly at what it is we're talking about. So we're learning, right? We're always learning. So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting. I want to thank all of you for being here.